Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with Satori Prime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast. Here we are with part 3, the completion of our trilogy, with a conversation that we had with Stephanie and Xavier Dubois. In part 1, we had an intense conversation with Xavier about the channel that he's created called Evokes, which allows people to grab incredible information on all arenas of life. They're just about to roll this out into the actual mainstream, but so far it's just been an IP channel, which means that you can grab it on your computer or connect it to Wi-Fi, I should say. And now they're going to go live. So that was part 1. And part 2, we started talking to Stephanie about her Power Up Your Life, Discovering the Fortune Within course that she's heading on Evokes, and how you can get this 10-part series for free. And in this section, we're going to actually wrap up the coursework and course material and things that Stephanie covers. We'll discuss things like action, productivity, conquering your fears, and living a balanced life. And then at the end, I actually asked them a question that I've been meaning to ask our listeners, but haven't yet. So stay tuned to the very end, and you'll get to hear a very interesting question that I think will probably become a staple of our Performance Enhancing Podcast interviews. So enjoy the remainder of the interview, and I'll see you guys on the next Performance Enhancing Podcast. All right, so we did the vision board. What comes next?
Okay, so once we did the vision board, this was episode 2 of the Evokes lost my train of thought series. So then we bring into a whole. Now I bring it to the left brain a little bit, right? So I'm trying to create that bridge. So we take the vision and you start looking at specific areas that you want to create, and we hone in even more. So it's really about, turning on that GPS, that laser of the brain, and really telling it what you want to create. And so I have people write out a specific vision as a story, a moment in time for each area of their life. So for example, if I'm creating my career, I talk about it as though it's already happened, and I write it in such detail: who I'm with, maybe even what I'm wearing, where am I, what does it feel like? And so really have people get present and really experience what that future could be as though they're already in it. And then we also talk about conversations. I have people start paying attention to their language and how it creates their reality. And so what I'm having them do is become the author of their story. So it's about, this whole series is about having people be the creator of their life, to no longer blame circumstances or their environment or their upbringing, to really have, own that power that they have. And so then what's been next after that was looking at our reasons. So this is still, tearing apart the verbal limitations, all the reasons we tell ourselves why we can't have something, and taking on a more right brain mindset, one of gratitude, one of looking at what does work instead of what doesn't work. So taking away that scarcity conversation and having people start looking at all the reasons why they can have something. So again, we're shifting from this left brain process of very limited linear thinking to expansive, wow, there's unlimited possibilities, kind of that creative mindset.
Yep.
And then, and so then we get to episode 5, which I'm drawing a blank on right now. I meant to have the whole thing in front of me.
Action.
Yes. Well, the action was actually last week. So now at this point, we are taking it into action. So I've built the foundation. Okay, we've started looking at our limiting beliefs. We've started to create a vision and a real, because I believe you need to know where you're going. If you're just going to go straight in, your journey is going to be way harder. But if you have a really clear idea of what you want to create, it's going to be way easier on you as, an individual and an entrepreneur. So then once you have that foundation and you started to shift your mindset, then we take it into the real world, which is action, right? And so what I talk about, and I believe John Assaraf talks about this in your podcast, or you reference this, that it's like, you can't just be on the mountain, like, meditating about $1 million coming down. You have to do something. You have to take an action. You're going to limit your results otherwise. So we talk about that, and we talk about action versus inspiration. A lot of us expect to be inspired before we act, and that our left brain is always going to be on that autopilot of wanting to keep us in the comfort zone, which usually sounds like I don't feel like it.
Yep.
So action is about doing something in the face of how we feel, and doing something consistently, even if we're not sure how. And then I also share a more like what I call right brain way of looking at planning. So planning, instead of planning from I'm here and then I'm moving forward, looking forward and moving backwards. So having that very like going from the vision and working backwards.
Yeah, I always tell people that I think where people, I love that you made that distinction between inspiration versus just action, and like people wanting to be inspired to take action. And it's funny because I think action actually leads to being inspired, which leads to more action.
Yep.
But the thing that ultimately I think keeps people driven is what you said before, which is a big enough why. And John Assaraf also mentioned that, where it's like, if your why is big enough, then all the reasons of why not. I mean, I love the example he used, which is if I told you that you set a date, you said like by, this time next year, I want to achieve X, Y, and Z. And then he'd ask you, well, who's your favorite person in the whole wide world? Well, if you didn't achieve this by that date, you would never see that person again. Like the person you love most in the world, you would not see again. Wouldn't you give up a lot of the bullshit excuses that stop you along the way? Like all the reasons and justifications and the I'm tired and I don't have time and blah, blah, blah. If like that was your reality, like almost in a Hollywood movie, like they're holding this person ransom, you don't get to see them if you don't accomplish this. Like I'm sure that people would take action that they never even thought to take if that was the life they, like that was the no back door, I have to do this type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so action, we all know, leads to results. I mean, thinking about it and having all that stuff, but it's really important to also note that not doing that prep work and not having all that other stuff is you're going to probably do the wrong action for a long, long time unless you do that piece in between. So there's like a smart way to jump in and a very smart, there's a stupid way to jump in and a very smart way to jump in. So what comes after action?
So now what I'm taking them into is more of the real world practicality of it, so, but from a right brain perspective. So doing things differently, right? Einstein says doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So what I'm having people do is try on different ways of doing things that have been shown through science to be more effective, right? So, and using that visual center, just harnessing that power that we already have. It's just way easier. Our brain can only hold so much. So it's so important to get it out into that physical visual realm, which is one of the things I have them do in terms of planning through, with big calendars and on a big blackboard or whiteboard. And then, then next what we're doing is we're now taking it to productivity. So looking at scheduling and how to be more productive, get more done in less time. Also, what most of us do is we do it all on our own. And then we wonder why we're overwhelmed. And we are not trained in asking for support. And I think that's what Evoke stands for too, is community and collaboration. And so I stand for that as well. We often think that people don't want to help us, and we're operating in this world of an individual as though I'm going to do it all on my own because I'm the only one who can do it, and that no one else would even want to help me. And I can't think of a bigger myth. People so want to make a difference and they so want to help, and you just need to ask. And sometimes asking is the hardest part. Right. And then there's a whole other conversation I would have with someone if I was coaching them as to why they're having a hard time asking. Yeah. But so we talk about that, that's going to be next week is resources, tapping into your resources and outsourcing. That's what I was looking for. And that just brings me back to what I missed. So episode 5 was about resources. I have people start looking at their community, and I have them use a brainstorming technique that's very visual to start to create a map of all their resources and people that they can start talking to. So I've already started to get them into that conversation, and now we're taking it to the next level. Then we're going to be talking about fear. So now I have people, I've already started to take them out of their comfort zone. Now they're taking action. This is when we're going to get confronted. This is when we're going to start having results that maybe we want and are scary, or results that we don't want and we don't know how to handle them, or we're just, we're afraid of failing. That's usually the biggest one. So in that episode, I'm going to cover fear as an illusion, because that's exactly what it is. Unless there is a lion coming at you, fear is an illusion, So taking away that life, death threat, our brain does not know the difference. If it sees something that's threatening to our survival, which nowadays, unless we are living in the jungle, our survival could be something like, it's pretty much just taking us out of the comfort zone, and it's different for everyone. That being able to view it as an illusion and not give it power is usually the first step, and then what to do in the face of fear. So it's not going to go away, but what can you do when you're faced with that?
Yeah, I mean, even for the brain today, losing an argument is the equivalent of being chased by a lion. And so if that's the way we live, and that's what Zav was talking about before, it's like, checking your ego at the door, no dogma, no like holding on to your own position, because that is actually like a animalistic threat mechanism. So just imagine if that's the way you live, like an argument is life or death for you. Imagine what it is jumping off a cliff to pursue your dreams, right? Like that is the thing that people fear most. The unknown, I think, is what people fear most. So
yes.
Imagine if that was no longer there for you. And that's, I think, ultimately where Steph wants to bring you is get you to that point where you're willing to jump and know that you have the tools that will help you build wings on the way.
Yeah. And then that's perfect. And then that brings us to our last episode, which is going to be about balance and having fun, because that's what's really been lost.
Wait, you can have fun while you're building a business, Stephanie?
Yes.
Really?
Well, and it's so, again, it is about bringing back that inner child, right? And trying to just take on a new view of life, instead of this view of everything's hard and it's heavy and, I've got bills to pay and there's no way that I am even going to allow myself to have fun because I've got this family I need to support, which, I'm not saying be irresponsible. You do have to take care of those people, but, you're actually, if you have fun, you're going to be more effective. And I believe we talked about, in your podcast, you've talked about flow, and what brings you into that state of effectiveness is bringing you into this whole other mindset, where there's less energy and charge going on. You're actually giving your brain freedom, and that happens when you're outside in your nature, when you're not just always on your phone, when you're unplugging, when you're being with your family, when you're playing and making sand castles with your little kid. But also what I'm going to talk about in the episode is how to bring games to your work, coming up with a game and a reward system, not forgetting to reward yourself when you've actually hit a milestone. Because a lot of us hit the ground running and we forget to look up, right? So being able to enjoy the process.
Absolutely. It's so funny. You're talking and I keep hearing this thing, like people are going to be listening and going, okay, that sounds all good. And they're going to be like, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that. And what I just want to say to people is like, what got you to where you are today is not what's going to get you to where you want to be. And having this completely altered view on life. Imagine a life where you got to a cliff and you were like a kid and wanted to jump off. And, my son, who's just under 3, I mean, the things that he tries, I'm like, if he didn't know that I was going to be there to catch him, there's no way in hell that he would try him. But he just, now I have to be there because, like, in his world, he's like, chair, couch, jump. Like, he just assumes that I'm going to catch him. So sometimes I actually kind of let him fall so he gets an idea of, like, there's a consequence to things. But I'll catch him once and he'll be like, okay, good, I'm good. So imagine having that kind of imagination and play and ability to take on the things in your life that matter to you. Guys, we have one life, not like a practice life and then the real one starts. This is it. And we've all had stories of how quickly it ends, right? I don't need to go dark on this, but if you're someone who's had a dream in their back pocket and you're just assuming that one day, someday, this thing is going to happen without you having a different mindset, a different plan, a different way to look at this thing, you are just going to keep producing the same exact results you've always produced. Mm-hmm. It takes jumping. It takes, if Stephanie, what was the thing like? I remember when you signed up for our apprentice program was the first time where you're like, you know what? I'm serious about this. Like, I'm going to create this. Whereas before it was just this like idea that you had. When you said that and when you jumped off that cliff was the first time you're like, this is real. Mm-hmm. And here you are, what is it, like a year later, and you've put this whole thing together. So it's just, I think it's so powerful for people, and I don't think that people quite get the power of your mind. Like, if I could say that 95% of any result you'll ever produce is produced by how good you are in between your two ears, and if Stephanie can charge your right brain a little bit to give you that play and fun and enthusiasm and inspiration and still make you amazingly productive, then I think you'd be an idiot not to check out what she's doing. So with that, where can they find out about you? And I know you're how many weeks into this seminar already?
So we just finished up session 6. So we just finished talking about action, and this week is all about productivity, and that goes live on Sundays at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. And I think Zav might be able to talk a little bit more about the different avenues. You can definitely find it. So everything's recorded as well. So if you're just seeing this and you're like, oh my gosh, I missed it, you didn't, you can go back, everything's recorded. You can take it at your own pace, which is great, so but I do recommend people having a structure for that, and trying to take it on each week. So it's available on evokestelevision.com, and also all the pre-recorded episodes are also available on my website, which is therightbrainentrepreneur.com. The shorter version is trbe.org. But then there's a /evokes, or if you go under training on my website, then you'll see evokes and everything is there. And we have a worksheet for each week, so to guide people through the exercises, because it's very hands-on. This isn't, yes, you're going to sit and see me for about an hour, but then you go and you actually are going through written exercises. You're making, a vision board. You're taking certain actions. So it's very interactive, which I think has it be a little bit more fun. You're not just sitting and being, watching a movie. It's then you actually have to go do something. It's a real lifetime class, and you've got homework. But Zav could probably talk a little bit, because I'm not very well versed on, Roku and Samsung, and I think we also have it on Google Plus and YouTube Live. So maybe he can talk a little bit more about how to find it there.
Yeah, you can just go to, if you want to watch it on live stream, you can go to livestream.com and just search for Evokes, EVOX. And then you'll see the list of shows. You'll see Stephanie's show. You'll see some of our other shows as well. But you can see all that there. Also, all of our videos are on Evokes Television's YouTube site. So that's just youtube.com/Evokes Television. And you can see that whole series there. And it's also on Vimeo. We put it on all the platforms because different people have different apps on their devices so they can watch them. So you can see her on all 3 areas.
Awesome. And I will leave for you guys again. I'll leave all the links. So on the resource page, you'll have all the links of how to get in touch with Zav, how to find these shows, Stephanie's blog, etc. So I want to leave you guys with this. I've been meaning to ask our guests this because it's kind of like something that occurred to me, and I thought, you know what? I think this would be a cool question to end with. And I haven't asked it yet, so we're going to do it today for the first time.
All right.
So this goes out to both of you. I talked to a lot of very, very successful people, and the line that tends to come up the most for a lot of us is, God, if I only knew then what I know now, right? So to each of you, if there was one thing that you can say that, God, if I only knew then what I know now, what would you tell yourself from, whatever it is, 10, 15, 20 years that you think would make an absolutely profound difference in the way you live your life today?
Stephanie?
Oh, sure. I'll start. Yeah. I think the two main things for me was taking on my personal development. First and foremost, being willing to look at the parts that you don't want to look at, but there's so much power in seeing yourself as source, right? There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that because it's your life. You're the one driving the car. And so a lot of people, and I understand why, it's way easier, it's way more comfortable to not take on that responsibility and, point fingers elsewhere. So in personal development, you go from this to this.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing.
Pointing your fingers from at someone to at her for those listening on audio.
Yeah. Oh,
like you're not going to see this and this.
Okay. Yeah. And so if I knew what I know now, I would have started my personal development when I was a teenager. If I had, I started at 29. I mean, and even as a therapist, that's what's so funny is I'm over here being like, I know psychology, la, 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 la. And then I took this, personal development course through Landmark and I was like, oh, I don't know anything. Oh my gosh, and so I'd say that, and also I think just to not stop, to keep taking action no matter what, and to give up what you think it's going to look like. If you told me 2 years ago that I would be doing a 10-session series on Evokes Television and on this podcast with you, it's not what I would have even imagined. And so we often get really attached to that vision that we might create. And I recommend that in this series, right? Don't get attached to that vision. This is a guideline, but be open to, the future. You have no idea where it's going to take you. And to really not just be so attached to it, to be open to what the universe would provide per se.
Brilliant.
And the last thing is that you're going to be fine.
Mostly.
I actually remember a coaching conversation. I had multiple with Guy, poor thing, because when I first started that online marketing thing, I was like, what am I doing? I would call him from Europe being like, I'm freaking out. And I just remember him saying Steph, really, what's the worst that could happen to you?
Yep.
And then when someone tells me that, you start to realize that, you're going to be fine. Even if I depleted my bank account, right, I would figure it out. I'm not going to be left on the streets, so to just remember that you'll be okay. You'll be okay.
Awesome. Great answer. Zav, we'll kick it off with you.
I would say the lesson that I continue to learn, but probably the one I want to give away to as many people as possible is trust your instinct. Malcolm Gladwell talks about blink, right? In a fraction of a second, the right choice, or a choice, I should say, and go there. Let yourself do that. I think I waste a lot of times through, just over and over and over rattling through different things and what ifs and stuff like that. And it's slowed me down from making some decisions and, some decisions that could have been a lot less painful for me and others. If I would have just said, nope, it's not the right person to be on my team. Nope, it's not the right business opportunity. And I think we really do know that. I think that when you start getting grounded in who you are and what you're about and what your mission is, those questions can be resolved very quickly and save you time, money, expense. And I love that notion that you really, I think to Stephanie and your point, doing that personal development work where you're really getting some of the stuff from that accumulates in our lives out of the way so that you really can trust yourself. I think that's the biggest lesson, is get to a point where you hear that inner voice, that peaceful voice, I should say, not the one that's frenetic and spazzy and I'm not quite clear what I should do. Don't trust that one at all. Run from that one. I call it my inner roommate now. It's my bad inner roommate, and you don't want to spend a lot of time in that room with that person. But the you that you trust, that brings you peace of mind, that listen and make those decisions. I mean, try it out for a couple months. See if you trust yourself. Look in your gut, like literally feel the feelings of your stomach and what's in your chest. And when you have that kind of peaceful being, then go, nope, not the right person, not the right situation. I'm not going to take that money. I had a situation earlier this year where someone offered a lot of money to support Evokes, and I turned it down. And it was so uncomfortable to go against what my brain said. No, but this is the savior. This money's going to make us, be able to do X, Y, and Z. And I finally learned the lesson and trusted myself, and I declined the money graciously. And it ended up being just a really good thing for our peace of mind and our values being intact. So that's what I want to give away.
Amazing. Great answers. So with that, I want to wrap up this performance enhancing podcast episode. Huge thank you guys to both of you for being on here.
Thank you.
Amazing conversation. Can't wait to get the feedback from the listeners. But I will leave all the links on how to get in touch with Zav and how to get in touch with Stephanie, so that you guys can see the recordings and the live events, etc. And if there's anything else that you guys need from them, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to assist. So with that, everyone, have an amazing day, and we'll see you on the next Performance Enhancing Podcast.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. Please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.